What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and all that kind of stuff. Hope you're all doing awesome today, and as usual, it's time to check out some more Reddit posts. So feel free to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments, and we're getting right into it. Neighbor who's very artistic by nature getting a sudden eviction because the landlord's daughter wants the house with the art inside. What art? There was a house in our area that was known for having really cool murals inside done by the previous tenant. Outside was pretty tame. She has a pre-built facade to make the house look like a cottage. Inside, all hand-done murals of Disney movies and fairy tales. The lady was an art teacher when she was younger, and later she started one of those paint-with-wine type businesses, which she did well before fully retiring to just doing paint commissions and furniture decorating. She's always been nice to everyone, even when I've been a jerk to her when she complained about the truck being too loud or speeding. We worked that out and have been friends since. She had an agreement with the original landlord about the art. Since it wasn't outside, it wasn't going to be a problem. She's been living in that house since the mid-80s with promises of getting the house in time. Unfortunately, he passed before anything was signed and legitimized and his kids took over. One of the sons visited the house to inspect it with his daughter, and apparently they fell in love and wanted the art house for his daughter. My neighbor didn't have a lease, which made the fight harder, and they used the art on the walls as an excuse to kick her out. She was devastated, but she was able to buy a property that fit her needs at the last minute in another state that had a full art studio area on the first floor. She originally wanted to leave the house as is without the cottage-looking front, but my friend offered to restore the house to, quote, Rebecca standards, for free since he needed to figure out how to use powered paint sprayers. He also had a friend that did landscaping to help her with the front of the house. She agreed, and we moved all her furniture out to storage units, and my friend let her stay in his guest house free of charge if she did a mural on the living room wall. She had the house cleaned out in a week. On the second week, they buffed all the walls with sanders. All the murals from the front to back were gone. It just looked like blotches of colors. My friend, being the ever-diligent painter that he is, masked anything that wasn't paint and sprayed Kills primer everywhere with his new toy sprayer. This thing was pretty cool. You can spray a whole wall in 4 passes. After the paint dried, he used his Rebecca collection of colors to essentially kill the character of the house. Rebecca condition is what we call flipper houses. It's always the same effing colors, white with grays all over the house and the crappy dark tone pergo flooring. The floors were tile, so he left it alone, but the walls were white semi-gloss. The wood paneling walls, trim, switch covers, outlet covers, counters, and cabinets were sprayed in the most depressing shade of gray. The house looked dead inside when I went in to check it out. It was weird not seeing all the murals. The front of the house was the last project she agreed to give his landscaping friend. The bushes in exchange for the labor of removing the cottage facade without breaking it. The landscaper basically ripped everything out and just dumped gravel and sand with a boulder for decoration. This weekend, I went to fix some problems at an old neighbor's house and noticed the house was still empty and asked the neighbor if he had seen anyone move in. He said earlier in the week there were some U-Hauls there, but none of them were unloaded, and that was the last time they remember seeing anyone there. Bet that daughter was in for a surprise when she saw the house get turned into a basic hellhole. Sociopath kidnapper in supermarket parking lot. My husband and I were at the supermarket and our baby was being especially fussy, so he took her for a quick drive, the motion of which usually calms her down. It only took about 10 minutes to settle her and I was still in the store, but was unsure how much longer I'd be and there's poor cell reception inside, so he pulled back into the parking lot to wait for me. It was an unseasonably nice day, so he took her in her car seat to sit on one of the benches outside the store. He took a business call and had just sat them down, absent-mindedly rocking the carrier when a woman, well-dressed, mid-30s, average height, fit build, approached them. It's not uncommon for people to ask to play with our baby. She's got big rosy cheeks, soft wisps of gold hair, and the most adorable gurgly toothless grin, especially when she's deep into a good nap. But her nap schedule is paramount, so my husband was preparing to tell the woman she actually couldn't play with our baby right then. She walked over right in their direction, brimming with nonchalant confidence, and before he can even finish his sentence explaining she was napping and not to be touched, she picked up the carrier and started walking off. He was in shock for a minute, not fully believing someone would be ballsy enough to do something so sinister in plain daylight, so he said, "Excuse me, put her down," as his panic mounted. She remained calm this entire time, but when he called after her, she started walking away more briskly than when she'd approached. He ran full speed ahead, tried to grapple the carrier out of her hands, finally resulting to restraining her arms. This woman yells, "Help, he's trying to take my baby! Kidnapping, 911, help!" kicking him in the shin and pulling a pink bottle of pepper spray out of her handbag. Of course, no one in the parking lot was clocking the earlier interaction and assumed he really was a kidnapper. A lone man in a Deadpool t-shirt versus a tiny, well-dressed woman. Immediately, a man knocked my husband to the ground and was holding him down. He could hear bystanders encouraging the woman to file a police report, but she was doing a very convincing job of acting shaken up and insisted she just wanted to get home. To make matters worse for my husband, she was driving a minivan. He was in a raw state of panic, realizing the entire parking lot had banded together to inadvertently facilitate the kidnapping of our daughter. He was begging and pleading with them, but no one was listening. They just kept screaming at him that the jig was up and he needed to lie still and wait for police and stop terrorizing a young mother. My husband finally had the novel idea to show them family pictures on his phone, but too panicked to think clearly, this manifested as him shouting, "I have pictures of the baby on my phone," which of course everyone interpreted as him either having stalking photos or worse. It was at this point that a man, I can't entirely blame the man considering what he thought was going on, kicked my husband as hard as he could in the ribs. It was at this point I was coming out of the store and I thought he was being robbed by these people. I was yelling for security, so panicked my chest constricted and I could barely get any sound out of it. It was only then I realized he did not have our baby with him. When I saw she was being held by a woman, I was relieved. I thought maybe the woman had intervened to move my daughter out of harm's way while my husband was being robbed and was walking away to get help. I couldn't find a security guard outside the store, so I ran up to the people holding my husband down, waving my wallet, pleading, "Take everything you want, just let up and leave us alone." And one of the men holding him down said something like, "Lady, we need to wait for police to deal with him." And I was so confused. Why would the muggers have called the police? I just kept stammering, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" and made out someone saying he tried to abduct that woman's kid. I did not understand and was sure I'd misheard him. My husband would never hurt a child, and we have 4 kids. If he were going to commit a crime, bringing home another kid would be at the bottom of his list. I kept trying to understand what the man was saying, and suddenly it all clicked. I looked around for the woman who had the baby carrier, and she was halfway across the parking lot. I went into total ballistic tiger cub mode, literally leapt out of my heels and sprinted across the parking lot. I am not a UFC fighter, I've never even taken a self-defense class, so all I could think to do was grab the woman by her hair and squeeze her throat with my other hand, which didn't do much. She was getting away even as I grappled with her. Amazingly, none of the other bystanders had yet to connect that my husband was telling the truth, and this woman was absconding with my baby. I yanked on her hair as hard as I could, and that was enough to make her drop the carrier. I was so scared and surprised that I actually just threw myself on top of the carrier, covering the entire thing like a blanket, and stayed that way without saying or doing anything else. The woman left. Not one person tried to stop her, even though she was clearly leaving without the child she claimed was hers, which would be pretty damn incriminating if I'd watched this scene unfold. Within the next couple of minutes, police had arrived. After all that, there were still several bystanders who explained it as my husband trying to kidnap the baby. The police, to my horror, assumed that she must not have had bad intentions. The first questions they asked me after getting her description weren't investigative. They were questions thinly veiled, trying to convince me not to pursue charges, still placing blame on my husband. A small sampling. Do your husband and the baby look dissimilar? Is there a chance she thought he was abducting the baby and she was trying to intervene? Could your husband have been doing something inappropriate or violent to the baby that would make her feel compelled to extricate the baby from the situation? Did she seem groggy or confused? Could she have mistaken either of them for her own family members? They spend more time verifying that the baby was actually mine than they concern themselves with the fact that the baby was not actually hers. My husband had called his brother at that point, who works in an office with a lot of lawyers, and connected with one ASAP who gave us the priceless advice to get every officer's name and badge number, to request copies of the store's security tapes right away, and to escalate our complaint higher up the chain if these officers weren't taking us seriously. Finally, we had reason enough to believe we were being taken seriously, and we went home, and both just shook and cried until we had to get our other kids from school. My husband is seething with rage and grappling with a feeling of helplessness from how little he was able to do, and has 2 cracked ribs from when the man kicked him. To the officer's credit, they did ask if he'd like to press charges, but considering the man was genuinely convinced at the time that he was on the right side of intervening in a kidnapping, and stayed to talk to police and apologized profusely when the truth became clear, he declined to press charges. Amazingly and frustratingly, there were still people who stuck around to talk to police who were giving my husband dirty looks, and one man who even implored the police to involve CPS to verify it was really our baby. Edit. After hearing from everyone and weighing the pros and cons, we got in touch with the police, and decided to move ahead with pressing charges against the 2 men involved in anything beyond basic restraint, to set an example that these men made the wrong decisions, even if they did come from a well-intentioned place. Thanks for weighing in. Update. They had a suspect they wanted to bring in for questioning, but so far have been unable to find her. They're fairly certain they know who it is and that the person is afflicted with pretty severe mental illness. If and when she comes into contact with police again, they're supposed to send her back here for questioning. We ultimately did not end up pressing charges against any of the men. We just wanted to put the whole thing behind us. That's honestly gotta be a parent's worst nightmare. It definitely goes to show how tricky these kinds of situations can be if you're just a bystander and only saw part of the interaction. Very infuriating though, the kind of treatment that these parents got from both the bystanders and the police. So yeah, that was definitely insane. Now for a palate cleanser, let's move on to a bit of a more lighthearted story. Today I effed up by trying to flirt with the guy at the gym and ended up in a full-blown CPR situation. So this happened yesterday and I'm still cringing so hard I might never step into that gym again. I, 22 female, recently started going to this new gym, and there's this insanely cute guy who works out around the same time as me. I've been trying to find the courage to talk to him for a couple of weeks. Yesterday I finally decided it was time. I saw him doing deadlifts and I thought, okay, casual compliment, easy in. So I walked by, smiled, and said, "Your lats are majestic." What the F? Majestic? What was I thinking? I don't know why I said that. I meant to say you're lifting a lot, or nice form, or literally anything else. He looked confused and said, thanks? And I panicked and decided to just walk away and die in the locker room. While trying to speed walk away in embarrassment, I tripped over a medicine ball someone left in the way, my face planted into the floor, and I knocked the wind out of myself so hard I couldn't breathe for like 20 seconds. A trainer saw it happen, thought I was having a heart attack, and started actual CPR protocol before I could wheeze out, "I'm fine." That same cute guy helped hold my legs up while I got oxygen. Pretty sure I died inside. Anyway, now I'm the CPR girl at the gym. And yes, I still plan to go back. I cannot. Anyway, that's going to be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this. Take care, friends, and I'll see you next time.